of all adults in the UK have received at least one dose of a vaccine. Compare that to around 10% here across the EU as a whole, and the figures really sort of paint a picture of how starkly different the campaigns are. And some might say that this is now the EU throwing a bit of a tantrum, and it's ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
The U.S. is grappling with a severe migrant crisis on its southwestern border, and a record 5,000 unaccompanied children are now being held in Border Patrol custody. Local authorities have run out of space to house them, and many youngsters are being housed in cramped conditions in overflow facilities. These images from the city of Donna in Texas were released by a Democrat lawmaker. It is one of several border shelters that are now running at around 16 times capacity, and many children have been stranded there for at least 10 days, sleeping and eating on floors. Border crossings from Mexico are now at a 20-year record, presenting a big challenge for the Biden administration. With more, here's RT's Caleb Maupin.
Well, at this point, we've got Washington, D.C. officials going back and forth about whether or not what's happening at the border is really a crisis. We've got Biden promising that he will visit the border. Meanwhile, we've got the border officials and leaders of the Democratic Party in Congress urging the administration to get back to reality, take their share of the blame for the policies that seem to have fomented this crisis, and really get a grip on what is happening.
You have a breach on national security levels that have never before been seen in modern history. It just blows my mind how disconnected from reality they are, or maybe they do know. Maybe they just don't want to call a spade, you know, because it's uncomfortable. It's a slap in the face.
I said, hey, I just want to let you know what's going on. We need to get a handle on this before it gets out of hand. Even within a week, I was already calling the White House to say, hey guys, you've got to take a look at it.
When you create a system that incentivizes people to come across and they are released, that immediately sends a message to Central America that if you come across, you can stay.
While there are big calls for the administration to get things under control and start responding to what many are calling a crisis, it seems like the Biden administration does not want there to be media access to what is happening on the border and the U.S. facilities that have been set up. One journalist was quite outraged about the fact that he had to go to another country just to take photographs of what was happening here in the United States. He had to stand on one side of the border.
I respectfully ask US Customs and Border Protection to stop blocking media access to their border operations. I have photographed CBP under Bush, Obama and Trump, but now zero access is granted to media. These long-lens images taken from the Mexican side. Until now, US photojournalists haven't needed to stand in another country to photograph what's happening in the United States.
Now, many will recall that while Donald Trump was president, photographs of children held in facilities, detention facilities that were set up during the Obama administration were widely circulated. And there was mass discussion and outrage about, what they referred to in the media as kids in cages. And there was widespread visiting of the facilities. You'll recall Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had a well-publicized visit to the detention facilities, and there was widespread coverage. But the Biden administration seems to be rather adamant that it is simply not appropriate to give the media access and to publicize what is going on at the U.S. border.
I don't necessarily think that it's appropriate for journalists to be inside centers that are not permanent places for children, that children are not placed there permanently.
Now, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki says that the Biden administration is very committed to what she calls transparency. But it seems like when it comes to the situation at the border, it's much better to divert people's eyes and change the subject and try to avoid bringing attention to something than it is to resolve a situation that many are referring to as a crisis.
All right, for more on this, we can now cross live to political analyst and radio host Dave Perkins. Dave, you're always one who's interesting to talk to when it comes to these types of stories.
Good to be with you, Sean.
So what is your take on the situation at the southern border at this time?
It's way worse than it ever was under Trump and worse than it was under Obama. But you do have to remember, as your reporter mentioned, Obama started all this and didn't get any of the criticism. Once Trump got into office, he got the criticism for things he did not do. And now that he's out of office, the media doesn't want to criticize Biden for this here. They want to shut you out instead. There's not enough reporters complaining about this lack of access and lack of transparency. And that tells me government is up to something. Now, I'm going to share something with you that I have seen evidence for and believed for years. I believe when you can't figure out what it is they're doing, when it seems crazy on the surface, when it's counterproductive, when it's a giant hash of mixed messages, that means something they're doing that they're not telling you about makes everything clear and easy to understand. And my view is the Democrat Party is on a slow motion roll importing a perpetual voter majority of economically underclass people from other countries. The purpose for this is to get millions of people into America who are not familiar with the founding fathers, don't know anything about the Constitution, and don't care about it, and are familiar with voting for tyrannical socialist governments in order to get their dinner. That's the long-term goal of the Democrat Party, is a permanent economic underclass voting majority, and Donald Trump interrupted the process of that. And so now they're doubling down and trying to speed up the process in order to make up for 4 years of the Trump presidency. Wouldn't surprise me if not only, as Biden has done, stopped building the wall, it wouldn't surprise me if they tear it down. They are going to make as many people as possible come here as easily as possible, because they need to get to their goal as quickly as possible so they don't lose any more elections, so no more Donald Trumps pop up. That's the way I see it, Sean. The Democrat Party is up to something. They don't want us to know what it is, so we're getting mixed messages and a lack of transparency because they don't want people to find out what they're really doing.
All right, it wouldn't be a conversation between the two of us if I didn't push back just a little bit. Isn't the Biden administration constrained by the law here? I mean, are they just allowed to release these people into the wild willy-nilly, or do they have to follow some sort of a process? And we do have children there. They have to respect their rights as well.
It would be nice if there was a process, if there was a law that held Democrats to account, but I'm quite sure they don't care what the law says, and they have no intention of following any law that holds them back from getting to their long-term goal. The more children they can get into the United States, the better their plan looks for future generations. They're not just trying to do this to change the outcome of the next couple of elections. They're trying to change the whole country permanently. And so they have their eye on 20 and 30 years down the road, which is why children are being brought in here at such high numbers and being put through hell, might I add, by the people who are executing this plan, because they have a long-term goal of generations of Americans who are an economic underclass permanent voting majority, not just my generation, but the next 2 or 3.
So media access currently has been limited to housing facilities for migrants. Why is that if the White House keeps repeating that everything is fine?
Because they don't want people to make the mental connection between 4 years of criticizing Trump on this and then recognizing Biden is doing it much worse than Trump and should have much more criticism and much more responsibility for fixing it. They don't want people to know this, so they're not going to let you see pictures or let reporters talk to people who could tell them this, because they need to keep it a secret while they continue to execute their actual plan that they don't want anyone to realize. And that is this creation of a permanent economic underclass voting majority, so conservatives never win another national election in America.
All right, Dave Perkins, political analyst and radio host. It's always interesting to talk to you, get your thoughts on these types of situations. Thanks for being with us.
Good to talk to you, Sean.
All right, you are watching RT International. After the break.